Hello everyone, I'm Dan Hedges with engineering.com. We're here at the USA Science and Engineering Festival, and I'm joined by author Homer Hickam. Homer, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
You are the author of a new science fiction book for kids. This is called Crater.
Yes, I am. And Crater is actually the name of the protagonist in the novel. He's a 16-year-old boy who was born and raised on the moon in the early 22nd century. And he's living in a mining town called Moontown, way out in the lunar Alps. And of course, they're mining helium-3, which is the isotope on the moon that eventually we'll go get because it's the perfect fuel for fusion reactors. It's really, really out there. Of course, I have a background of living in mining town. Having written Rocket Boys, became October Sky, the town of Coalwood. Somebody said this is the story of Coalwood on the moon. And I won't argue with that, except I more or less think it as Huckleberry Finn on the moon.
That's right. So you mentioned Rocket Boys. That was the story, your memoir, of the time that you won the National Science Fair with your exhibit of rocket science.
Yep. The study of amateur rocketry principles, as I recall, was the name of our little exhibit. And yeah, we went off to the National Science Fair in 1960 and won a gold medal. Coal miners' kids, who would have thunk it?
And so as a young man, were you inspired at all by science fiction of that day?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a big-time reader. I was a poor student, but in terms of math and science, I wasn't too interested, but I loved to read. And I always, everybody said I would someday grow up and make my living as a writer, and ultimately that proved to be true. But as it turned out, I had this little 40-year diversion into engineering, and the reason for that was two things. One, I did love to read science fiction. Heinlein and Asimov and all the great writers of the golden age of science fiction back in the 1950s, hard science fiction. And then along came Sputnik, and the world's first Earth satellite, and I was totally enamored by the idea of us actually going into space, because I read about it thinking it would happen 50, 100 years in the future, but now it was happening during my lifetime. I put those things together in my little teenage brain, and what do you know, I decided to start building rockets, which required ultimately a working knowledge of calculus and analytical geometry, and I was having trouble with algebra at the time. But my boys and I of the Big Creek Missile Agency, as we called ourselves, taught ourselves calculus and analytical geometry and differential equations, and we built sophisticated rockets that at the end, the last one flew over 6 miles high, and then I went off to engineering school.
And now you're inspiring a new generation of engineers.
I hope so. I mean, that's the whole idea behind Crater, really. Publisher Thomas Nelson came to me and said, Homer, it's time that you got back to your brand and started writing a little bit about space. And by the way, we'd love for it to be a young adult novel. And I said, okay, I want to set it on the moon 120 years in the future, and I want it to be about a teenage boy who ended up being Crater. And they said, that's such a good idea, let's make it into a trilogy. And I said, it's your money, let's do it. And so far, I mean, the book's only been out a couple of weeks, but it's selling at a rapid rate, and I think maybe we're going to go out there and find our audience.
All right, fantastic.
Great.
We'll have more with our interview with Homer Hickam on engineering.com.